Warning: the following program contains sensitive topics, including sexual assault, human trafficking, and the exploitation of minors. Viewer discretion is advised.
Do you want to just go into the questions? I forgot what was the game plan per se.
No, I think, yeah, having a general, like, small conversation about it before getting into the more formal stuff would be nice.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna switch to gallery so I can see you all better. Okay.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I muted you all just in case during the presentation, just in case any background noise.
I
So
don't know. Oh, Elle's not muted, or Elle's just posing like this. But I can't hear you.
I can't hear you,
Something's wrong.
Al.
No,
Yeah.
can't.
Wait, I turn off. I muted my own mic.
Okay. Okay.
Because I can press it like this.
Yeah. Oh, I see. I see. Very cool. Okay, so from like I miss persuasion. I miss persuasion, the activity. I'm reminded of like former students that I've worked with on past persuasive speeches. So Seadona, kudos to you. I mean, this is a well-written speech. I'm really saddened that COVID denied that opportunity to technically have a state and national tournament, because I'm sure that this would have really,
Well,
done well.
sorry.
And so I'm at least glad to have heard, because Jules and Bill mentioned this to me, the two directors of forensics, that any topic that didn't go to state or national could go back, could be brought back. Have you thought about sending this to state and Fire Pie if a national tournament does go virtual?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. When I was writing my new persuasive for this semester, we wanted to do something that was tied back to COVID. So I ended up writing a different speech rather than taking this one, but I would really love to take this. I think it's really, one of my favorite bits was just like right now, kind of like right now as we're talking, was getting to talk to other people, like the competitors in the room after, because a lot of people haven't heard about this. And it is kind of shocking, or a lot to take in or think about when you do hear about what's happening in America.
Yeah. I found, especially when it comes to any kind of topic that's even related to sexual assault, there's always like just shock that one would even mention it at all. I remember my first semester, this is something I can relate to, in that in my first semester, we were doing research essays, and they were giving us a bunch of topics about like general topics to work off of, because it was an ASL support class. So people need help with prompts. And one of the prompts was just something about the media and violence. And the teacher was kind of edging people on to talk about how violent video games could cause people to be violent. But because it's something I'm very passionate about, I decided to take on the topic of sexual violence in film and television, and how that has been shown to cause people to have more impulsive, violent tendencies. And I remember like my professor was really uncomfortable with it, and he was just like, but I don't even know why you would want to write this kind of thing. But it really is important to like get those uncomfortable topics out, because that's the only way that we can deal with them and make sure it doesn't happen to anyone again.
Yeah, I find that funny, because normally I realized halfway through the speech that normally I'll say something like content warning for sexual assault or something like that. But I understand that for some people, it can be something that can be really triggering or activating to hear about. And I totally empathize with that, because of how much I really do hammer home within the speech what is happening to these women, and like specifically where and when. But I very much agree with you on that. There's so much value in bringing up not just that it's happening, but the reality and the truth of how it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, that's the only way you start a conversation, or you reach an end to something, is by spreading awareness and truth.
Yes, and the truth hurts.
Often it does.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
But also necessary. I mean, the narratives that you had to really not just articulate, just the numbers, but the stories behind them, and that helps give those experiences to life. I mean, you just have sexual assault on one hand, but then you have the indigenous women in as the population,
Mhm.
and what's happening, and it's just astronomical, what type of horror that can occur. And you do a really, really strong job in highlighting, the potency, the statistics, discussing the mindset, and discussing the lack of legislation, and I was glad to hear that the Savannah Act has
Yeah.
progressed forward, which is good. But I think you really, shed light on the importance of what we can do as individuals. So I thank you for that. So
Yeah, that was something that was like pretty important to me, is just that I feel like, I'm biracial, I'm Filipino, and I feel like I'm pretty aware of like racial, tensions or things that are happening in society. But at the same point, when I started doing research on this topic, I was so incredibly shocked by how much I didn't know and how far this was off my radar. So it was important to me that I included all of these stories, because like I said, there is, just from 2016 alone, there's the 5,712 women, and I include maybe 4 of their stories in my speech. But it was really important to me that their names were heard and their names were repeated.
yeah, wow.
It really is disgusting just how pervasive it is, and I'm shocked that I had no idea what kind of I kind of assumed that Indian it did reservations would have the same powers as a state would, but they can't even prosecute people who are not outside the tribe. That's ridiculous and horrible. That was, I mean, that's those kind of laws are created with malicious intent, and it's crazy that they're still there.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to see such a blatant remnant of the stigma that we used to, or that we still hold against Indigenous people, and how like we're still representing that stigma in our legislation rather than, having more progressive ideals. And it's very weird, because you'd say to someone like, do you think that they would be able to have the power to prosecute non-Indigenous people, especially since the crime is committed on tribal land?
Yeah.
Because that's how we think about crime. We think about it in jurisdictions and like who covers what. So it makes so much sense, like for our understanding of the justice system, for Indigenous people to be able to prosecute whoever. But I mean, it's just such a shock when you hear that that's not possible. And also, just like you were saying earlier, I think it's a really interesting topic because so many people can relate to the trauma and struggle of sexual assault and of like raising your voices about that. But it's shown so specifically in the fact that sex traffickers specifically are preying on these communities because there's that legislative way for them to basically get away with it. And
Mm.
yeah, it's about like that loophole that's found, and that's what's creating like this gigantic problem.
Oh. Wow.
I think, well, I was gonna say first of all that this speech was very well written, but also I think a good way to open up people who have not even heard of this issue. So like for someone like me, I guess, okay, well, I have this thing where these big issues are not really like kind of hit me by surprise, because not that I've done my own research, but media and films that I've seen kind of shown these issues with race, but also with how history, it becomes an excuse to let violent actions and lack of change happen. So for you to point out these things was very interesting, but I think, I don't know, there's so much going on, but the way you shared out was so well executed. And I hope that people watching this understand that it's more relevant. I think that's the term that I would say was most powerful in your speech. You made it relevant to people. You brought it from a personal story down to, hey, you can use your smartphone right now. Go on this website and make a change, a small one. And I think if people understand that, it could help us have that conversation around things like sex trafficking and respecting people. Just learning to respect people and open up that. So
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of like activism fatigue going on right now. I'm not sure if you guys can relate to this, but just like being, like I'm 19. We're about to, I'm transferring to a different college right now. I'm thinking about like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And especially like the world that we're all becoming part of. What role am I going to play in that? And that all like very much weighs on you. And personally, like I try to take my activism very seriously, but at the same time, it can be so overwhelming because it's so concentrated on social media. What I really like about giving this speech is that there are such simple solutions that are like accessible to you, not just if you have money or if you have time or if you're able to leave the house right now, but just through shopping on Amazon, which is especially during the pandemic, something that so many people are doing for their groceries to stay safe. But that's something that I like about persuasive speeches is that you have to give a solution. You have to tell about like what the personal way that you can get involved in it is. So it's not just, hey, here's a problem. It's also, here's an action plan for you so that you can hear about it and feel kind of devastated about it, but also move forward.
That is definitely a comfort a small comfort to have after learning about something so devastating, or just having to digest something that's so devastating. But that, I think that is a big part about activism fatigue, because all of the issues that are most prevalent and most important don't have easy solutions. And that's kind of that's the biggest struggle, is that for most of these issues, there's nothing that's, certain. But that is helpful with the persuasive speech, that there's some immediate things that you can do to help try to make things better. And I almost laughed at the Amazon thing. So it's just like, oh, it's just like, adding a little tack of portions of a profit to that. I just thought it was funny. I don't know, because it seems like such a normal thing to do, or like, I don't know, it seems so like non-dramatic for such a dramatic thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that it is funny of like sort of grounding all of this, and especially our solutions, in something that is very domestic and very accessible, and
yeah,
that like, you do on your phone without even thinking about it.
And I think that because that can be so universal, and that anyone can do that, like, and thinking about all the people that we may know, or you may have an Amazon account, or what have you, and that just notion of that act of getting involved, it one sheds light, it helps the movement, it helps, instill change, but at the same time, I think if it can, it just raises the levels of consciousness of what we as individuals can do to remedy other particular type of social issues, other injustices that are out there, that, if we become aware of, and we can kind of do things that are within our space to make change, we can go ahead and do those things, and so the plug of the website again, can you say that site again one more time, or again for us, Seadona, if you don't mind?
Yes, that is CSVANW.org. If it helps you remember, it's Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women. So it's just the acronym for that. Yeah, the website is really helpful. They actually have a bunch of other stuff, ways that if you are interested in contributing to MMIW awareness, I think they have a social media like posting challenge going on right now, where you can post a picture and probably tag them. But yeah, I think it's really important to both like recognize that I have like a tiny bit of power as a persuasive speaker. I can go out and spread the word, but I think it's also really important that we tie this back to Indigenous voices, and that we do, like, we go and we visit the website, we go and we hear the other stories, especially like straight from the people who are suffering.
Great. Also true. Okay, I'm gonna hit stop, and we're gonna do it. We'll go back to the actual questions, just to make sure that we get those. I love this conversation. This was awesome.